Hi everyone. Let everybody get some time to get started and tune in. While we're doing that, while we're kind of waiting for people to get started, I'm just gonna maybe do a panoramic of the room that we're standing in. Just give you some visuals before we get started. Give people some time to join the Facebook Live video. Right now we're in the entrance hall, but today we're actually going to be looking at the dining room and drawing room. Let me give you a close-up of some of these features that we have in the house. This is one of my very, very favorites. All the gas light fixtures throughout the house. The East Lake staircase here with incredible detail. Got anaglypta here. Kind of see we've got Henry Clay here. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and get started. My name is Cameron Walpole and I'm the manager of tours and education here at Ashland, the Henry Clay Estate, and this is the second installment of Wake Up with Ashland. This is our virtual field trip series. We're gonna be doing this every Tuesday and Thursday. We're going to be exploring a different part of the estate. The last time on Tuesday, we were here in the entrance hall. Today, we're gonna move on to the dining room and the drawing room. Next week, you actually might find us outside. We might go into the garden. We're just gonna kind of, there's 17 acres here and there are 18 rooms in this mansion, so we've got a lot to explore. So if you do have ideas of things that you wanna see on here, let us know in the comments. And while we're kind of getting warmed up, I would love for everybody to go ahead and go to the comment section right now and tell me where you're watching from. We had people from Wisconsin and West Virginia, Washington State. We had all the W states covered, I'm pretty sure, last time. So let's see where you're coming from. Just see, learn a little bit of geography while we're here. Just a couple of announcements before we go into the dining room and drawing room. There are plenty of ways to stay engaged here at Ashland while you're staying safe and healthy at home. One way is by coming here to Ashland. We have 17 acres, plenty of space for social distancing. You can take walks on the historic walking paths. Those paths, some of them were actually the paths that Henry Clay walked. So he was contemplating great issues of the country at that point. And so you can actually come out here to Ashland and do the same thing. You can take a breath, see some nature, see some trees, and just kind of be calm and relaxed for a few minutes. So that's one way you can stay engaged. Hi, Michelle from Worthington, Kentucky. We also are encouraging you to go to our website. There are tons of resources on our website. Obviously, we're going to be doing our Wake Up with Ashland every Tuesday and Thursday at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. But I actually want to kind of tell you about a brand new thing that we launched yesterday. We have created an online exhibit that you are going to be participating in. You are going to be sharing your family artifacts. So this is called Making History Today, Our Kentucky Families. Now, you don't have to live in Kentucky to participate in this. You can live anywhere, and maybe you identify as a Kentucky family. Maybe you were born here, maybe your grandparents were born here, and I'd like to stress that these do not have to be old artifacts, just something that helps you think about your time here in Kentucky, your relationship to Kentucky. Maybe it's a family Bible. Maybe it is, I don't know, your Joseph Beth Rewards card. I don't know, anything that kind of ties you to Lexington, to Kentucky in some way. We want to be hearing about that. And we are going to pair that with our collection. So maybe your family Bible is a lot like the Hart family Bible. So we're going to be kind of pairing those, and every single submission we get, we're going to be kind of providing, a little bit of context for you. So you can find that on our website, henryclay.org, and you're going to go to blog, and then you'll find it right there. So I see George. Hi, George from London. Thanks for participating. Now that we're kind of started, we've got a few announcements underway. Let's actually take the tour. We're going to be going into the dining room and drawing room. I'm going to turn it around here and just give you a recap. We have Henry Clay right here, aged 41, just to give you kind of a time period that he was living in, born in 1777 during the American Revolution and died in 1852, so before the Civil War. So his generation was really charged with keeping the country together, and that was Henry Clay's big thing. So he was known as the Great Compromiser. And later in the tour, maybe in a couple days, we'll be talking about compromise and what those compromises were that kept the Union together. So we're here in the entrance hall. Just kind of do a little roundabout here. You can see the front door here. And guests would have been welcomed into the front door by this man. This is Charles Dupuy. He was enslaved with his entire family here at Ashland. He would have welcomed Henry Clay's visitors into the door, and then visitors would have gone into the drawing room. So we're going to go into the drawing room now. This is one of the most beautiful rooms in the house. Oh, hi, Mitch and Julie Sumner. Those are my parents. Thanks for watching, Mom and Dad. We are in the drawing room now. Want to kind of give you a view of kind of the grandeur of this room. So, what would guests have thought when they stepped foot into this room? Well, this is a room for entertainment, right? This is meant to please and meant to impress visitors. So, visitors would have come in here, and this is where entertainment would have happened. But people who Henry Clay and Lucretia, Henry Clay's wife, entertained wouldn't have been, watching television, watching sports, watching Facebook Live videos. They would have actually been, talking. They would have been conversing with each other. So we have a lot of chairs, obviously, in here, kind of set up in a circular fashion so people could speak to each other. But then we also have musical instruments. This is a piano from the 1840s, an upright piano, and it would have been one that was a model that would have been available at this time. On the piano, you're actually going to see, I'm going to see if I can zoom in. Oh, I can. You can see a Lexington waltz, Lexington Grand Waltz that was written for Henry Clay's wife, Lucretia. So that kind of shows you she would have been the one in the family who played the piano, and actually the Harts were probably one of the first families in Lexington to even own a piano. Henry Clay's granddaughter, Anne Clay McDowell, who we'll talk about in a minute, she actually played the Martin parlor guitar that you see right there. So you can really kind of visualize in this room family members gathering, playing music together. Henry Clay was known to play the fiddle, and maybe not so good at playing the fiddle, but he was spirited nonetheless. So you can kind of visualize what that looked like. Now, who would have been visiting here? Well, we have, hello, Eli from across the road, Richmond Road on Bassett Avenue. Hello. Who would have been visiting here? We have people like the Marquis de Lafayette and Daniel Webster. So when Henry Clay welcomed visitors here, he was entertaining some of the biggest names in American politics at the time. And it wouldn't have necessarily been Henry, you can see Henry right here, it wouldn't really have been his job to entertain guests. It would have been his wife Lucretia's job. So let's think a little bit about what the role of women was during the 17 and 1800s. It looks a little bit different than it does today because there were a lot of restrictions on what women were allowed to do. And women like Lucretia, even though she was very wealthy and also a white woman, she had more, ability to do things than other women, but she would have been very restricted. Hi, Kimberly from southeastern Kentucky and Stephanie from Tennessee. Glad y'all are joining us. We're in the drawing room right now. So Lucretia would have kind of been charged with the entertainment of the family and also making sure that Henry Clay was seen as this, popular figure, that his home here at Ashland was worthy of a great statesman. So that would have kind of been Lucretia's job, and she supported her husband's career in that way. We call this today the Cult of Domesticity. That's a lot of kind of syllables in that, but all that means is that that's the role, the sphere that women were allowed to be in, taking care of the house and the home, entertaining and that sort of things. So this is Women's History Month, and next week we're actually going to go to Madge's room. Henry Clay's great-granddaughter, Madeline McDowell Breckinridge, was a suffragist. So we'll talk about her next week. Now, can somebody tell me in the comments who we're looking at here? I'll give you a second. Hi, Allison from Garrard County. Who's in this massive painting? I know that some of you all know this. Probably everybody knows who this is. All right. Again, you're lucky that I can't call you out. But this is George Washington and Martha Washington, right? This painting that you see here, aha, thank you, Eli. Yes, George Washington. Thank you, Julie. This painting that you see here is of George and Martha Washington, and this painting would have been in Henry Clay's version of Ashland in this room. It was actually given to Henry Clay by a supporter, and the supporter was saying, of course, George Washington, Henry Clay is going to be a great president, just like George Washington, but also Lucretia was going to be the perfect first lady in the kind of same model as Martha Washington. She was going to take care of the estate, freeing up her husband to think about issues of the nation. So that's why this painting was given to the Clays, and it's always kind of been in this position in this part of the house. Hi, Monica from Indiana. Welcome to the Facebook Live virtual tour. Now, let's talk a little bit more about George Washington. He was the hero of his day, right? He's still considered a hero in American history today. But Henry Clay's generation, remember, he's kind of coming up after the Revolutionary era. He would have been, he would have really admired George Washington. And so every chance he got, he tried to associate himself with George Washington. Kind of got a glare here, but I'll show you this image, which is a campaign image because Henry Clay ran for the presidency 3 times, 1824, 1832, and 1844. Of course, we don't know of a President Henry Clay, right? He never won. But this campaign image from the 1844 election shows Henry Clay in the forefront, and who do we see in the back left-hand corner? Your guess again, it's George Washington, of course. So he's always trying to associate himself with George Washington. So voters can kind of liken the two. Politicians still do that today. So Henry Clay definitely is using some of the same tricks that politicians even today use. Excuse me. Okay, I want to show you another artifact here. Kind of difficult to see in here. I'm going to zoom in. This is the Washington Goblet. This is one of Henry Clay's prized possessions. Henry Clay would have shown this off to visitors when they came here to Ashland. He also took it with him to Washington, D.C. Excuse me. Because this is, again, one of his prized possessions. So always, again, trying to associate himself with George Washington. Now, Henry Clay was a figure of enormous fame during his time, and so there were commemorative items made of Henry Clay. When he died in 1852, there was this commemorative item was made, and it's a cane, very fashionable at that time in the 1800s for gentlemen to use a cane. But it has a little bust of Henry Clay on the top, and we also have this incredible Joel T. Hart sculpture of Henry Clay, and this, the family said, was the closest likeness of Henry Clay. Excuse me. He was apparently very difficult to capture, but in portraiture, because he had such a, such a lot of energy, and so he was difficult to get him to sit down and pose, but apparently this is a great likeness. So I want to give a kind of a close-up of that. Hi, Lisa from Winchester. Hi, Trish. Okay. Now, after the family had finished kind of entertaining in here, they would have welcomed their guests into the dining room. Now, as we go, I want you to note one detail that would have been maybe a little different. Is these pocket doors that you see here. Can you see them? They would have been closed while the table was maybe being set and the meal being prepared. During Henry Clay's time and his son James, all of the food, all of the labor done here at Ashland was done by enslaved people. So they would have been the ones cooking the meals, cleaning and preparing, setting the table and serving. So we just want to kind of think about that in every aspect of this tour, because all of their labor made Henry Clay a very wealthy man. And so when we're looking at this beautiful mansion, it's really important to kind of keep that in mind, kind of the cost of it. So those pocket doors would have been closed and they would have been opened, and the visitors would have entered here to the dining room. Now, the dining room chairs that you see here actually belonged to Henry Clay. Probably been reupholstered since then, but those are the ones that Henry Clay would have used, and his wife Lucretia. We've got the table today set for tea, and you can see Henry Clay right here in the middle of the room, and we're going to kind of go through some of the portraits on the wall. We talked about how famous Henry Clay was during his time. So imagine then being named after Henry Clay. This is Henry Clay Jr. right here. Henry Clay Jr. was he was always trying to follow in his father's footsteps. We have letters between the two gentlemen, and Henry Clay Jr. says to Henry Clay how difficult it is for a young tree to grow in the shade of an aged oak. Now, what does this mean? Well, it means that he's young, he's trying to develop and become his own person, but he's always going to live in the shadow of Henry Clay, who, again, was just such a huge figure during his time. It's almost kind of difficult to put a comparison to somebody in modern times. But he tried his best. He became an attorney, just like his father. He even went to West Point. He married Julia Prather Clay. We're going to go over here and see Julia Prather in the red dress there. And they had several children together, but unfortunately, Julia died due to complications from childbirth. And this was unfortunately very common for young mothers, and it was devastating to Henry Jr. And in some ways, remember I said that he went to West Point. In some ways, in order to deal with his grief, he joined the 2nd Kentucky Volunteer Infantry during the Mexican-American War. Mexican-American War started by James K. Polk, who Henry Clay lost to in the 1844 election. So this was a devastating blow to Henry Clay because he didn't even agree with the war. He didn't want the war to happen, but his son ended up going. His son was killed at the Battle of Buena Vista, and the news of his death came to his family over dinner. We know that Henry Clay found out the news in a letter written by General Zachary Taylor, who would later become President of the United States. Henry was likely sitting in one of the chairs that you see around the table today when he read the news and collapsed. This is all devastating. These are difficult stories to hear, but there is a silver lining, and that's Henry Clay Jr. and Julia Prather Clay left behind a legacy, a daughter, and Clay McDowell. She was the one who we saw her Martin parlor guitar in the last room. She married a man named, believe it or not, Henry Clay McDowell. Now, Henry Clay was not related. Henry Clay McDowell was not related to the Clays, but that's already showing you how famous and important he was to Kentuckians and Americans. People were already starting to name their children after Henry Clay. So Anne Clay McDowell and Major McDowell would purchase the estate and bring it back into family hands. And it's her daughter, Nanette, who set up the Henry Clay Memorial Foundation. So While this is kind of a sad story that we're telling you today, there's a silver lining, and that's that Henry Jr.'s line of the family were the ones who preserved Ashland, allowing visitors to come, see this place today. So we'll kind of end the tour there, unless anybody in the comments has questions. I'd be happy to answer them. George Goss, J. My grandfather was named for Henry Clay. So you may know people in your family who are named after Henry Clay, right? You can still see a lot of Clays and Henrys in Kentucky today who are named after Henry Clay. So that's pretty cool. That's a cool connection, George. Thank you for sharing that. Are there any artifacts that you would like to hear about that we might not have mentioned in either room? I'd be happy to kind of go over those or show them a little bit more closely. Actually, I'll show this one because everybody's got questions about this. This is a safe. Now, what on earth is that safe doing in the middle of this gorgeous dining room? People ask that all the time. If I'm going to zoom in, because this is kind of cool that I can do this, you can zoom in and actually see the ruts under the weight of that safe. So we can tell that it has been there for a long time. And then images from the McDowell era, so during Ann Clay and Major McDowell's time here. They lived here in the 1890s to about 1917. We have seen pictures that show that this safe was there in this spot, so that's why it's there today. Some of the artifacts that you see throughout the house either belong to Henry Clay or his descendants, and then some of them are period pieces. But the table, for instance, it belonged to the McDowells, as did the chairs over here. But then the striped chairs belong to Henry Clay. Stephanie said she was going to ask about the safe, so yeah, good. I'm glad that answered it. Okay, well, unless there are other questions, we'll kind of end here. And next week we're gonna hear about Henry Clay's great granddaughter, Madeline McDowell Breckinridge, who is Ann Clay McDowell's daughter. And we're going to hear about the suffrage movement in Kentucky because, again, this is Women's History Month, so we want to be telling those important stories. And listen, we know that you all want to be here at Ashland. We want you here, and we cannot wait to have you all back. We are glad that everybody's staying healthy at home. We know that that's important. So we're just thankful that you're joining us in this way. Please know that you can drop a comment anytime and let us know something you want to see if there's something particular. Actually, before we go, I've got to show you one more thing because it's too cool and everybody asks about it. And you can't touch it when you're here in person because, as our students know, your fingers have oils on them. So if you rub your fingers back and forth together, you will notice that you have oils. So if you touch any artifacts or the walls, it's really going to damage them. So that's why I'm going to show you an up-close image of this, the Lincresta. It's the wainscoting that you see throughout the room. Everybody wants to know about it because it looks like it has been carved out of a single piece of wood, but it hasn't. So this is actually made by pressing linseed oil and sawdust together and creating this kind of plank. So you can kind of see here where it kind of ends and the planks are kind of put together. So that's one of the most beautiful things in this. Michelle says, is that Henry Jr.'s sword in the pic? Yes, it is. That belonged to Henry Jr. Again, Henry Jr., for those of you who are just joining us, went to West Point. So that's Henry Jr.'s, and he fought and died in the Mexican-American War. I'm going to just leave it here for a second and wait to see if anybody has any questions. You may have, I don't know, some silver in your family, some china that's important. Maybe you've got some Louisville stoneware, I don't know, something that kind of ties your family to Kentucky. If you have a piece of, I don't know, it can be a basketball, it can be anything, an autographed thing from Coach Cal, something that kind of shows your family connection to the state of Kentucky, we want you to go and contribute that to our Making History today, our new exhibit that actually I think we posted about in the comments if you want to link to that. So if you have anything like that in your family that you'd like to contribute, then we want to see it because you can be part of this new exhibit that we're creating. Is there anywhere to see the lineage of the Clay family? Yeah, if you go to henryclay.org, you can find a family tree. And when in doubt, if you ever have questions about whether or not your family is related to Henry Clay, you can actually contact our curator, Eric Brooks, at ebrooks@henryclay.org. We can put that in the comments. And Eric will be able to answer your questions. So he works with a lot of the family, even today, and he works with a lot of people who are doing genealogy. So he's very knowledgeable, and he'll be able to answer your questions. So that's a good question. Thank you, Tracy. Okay, folks, we're going to see you again Tuesday at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we are going to go check out a little bit more about Madeline McDowell Breckenridge. Until then, we are so excited to bring this information and these tours to you. We're also thrilled that our 17 acres are open to the public. So we're going to encourage you right now to go on our website, henryclay.org, and go to donate. Click the donate button, and you can donate any amount of money. We also have memberships. We also, for teachers and students, we have an education membership. It's only $25, and it gets you free tours all year, discounts in our museum store, discounts at special events. But you can kind of contribute in that way too. Our museum store is also online right now, so you can purchase there, free shipping in Fayette County. We want you all to, we know that you value Ashland as a major part of Lexington and Kentucky history. So we want you all to show that and make sure that we can survive this crazy time, keep our grounds open and looking great for you all. So just gonna kind of encourage you to do that. Teachers, share this with your students. If you have questions that you want me to cover on Tuesdays and Thursdays, or specific questions that you want me or our curator, Eric Brooks, to share with your class, maybe it's on Zoom, reach out to me. My email address is cwalpole@henryclay.org, and I think we can probably put that in the comments as well. And I'd be happy to work with you. This is a strange time, and we are just so proud of Kentucky students, especially for doing their part. They're staying home, they're staying put, they're staying healthy, and they're continuing their education. So we're happy to provide this kind of service. And if you have any questions, we just can't wait to hear them, and we're going to explore them together over the next few weeks. So stay healthy, everyone, and be a great part of Team Kentucky. Thanks so much. Bye.